Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan, and this is going to be a very exciting Inside the Birds, as a lot has happened since our last Inside the Birds dropped on Monday morning. We've had a big-time contract extension. We've had a free agent signing, and we've got some trade wins potentially swirling. We'll get into that. Just a lot as we sort of round the corner and get ready for the NFL draft, because right now, right between this podcast, Adam, and the start of the draft, we'll have our annual NFL first round mock draft podcast with Andrew Zaccheaus that'll be out Monday. And then Thursday is the draft. So it'll be great. And we're going to do a pre-draft show from 6 to 7:30 on that Thursday, and just empty the notebooks and really go over everything we got as the Eagles get ready to make 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, well, you say get ready to make 2. Will they make both?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, good point.
because man, everyone is fixated. Every Eagle fan that I know, how he's trading out of 10, trading down to 10. I'm like, okay, I get it, but it depends on who drops. This is a different draft. This is not a great draft with elite players. It's not like we know who is on everyone's draft board. So as we've learned for covering this business for so many years, one team will have a guy at 25. The next team will have that guy ranked at 12. So that's what you're hoping for, that somebody likes a player that dropped to you, and that's how you drop out. That's how you trade out.
Yeah. Now, Mike Gill in our Football at 4 segment on 97.3 asked me a great question the other day. He said, Geoff, what do you think is more likely? Oh, that was a good Mike Gill impression, by the way.
No, not bad.
Not bad, right? He asked me, what was more likely, the Eagles making 2 first-round picks or the Eagles having middle-round picks, meaning 4th, 5th, and 6th round? Which, by the way, the answer could be both. I mean, they theoretically could make 2 first-round picks and still trade out of this, or down in the 2nd round, picking up a 3rd, a 5th, who knows what. But I had to pause and really think about it. And I think a really good discussion that we're going to wind up having, Adam, is the concept of having 2 first-round picks is maybe not what it might seem to the organization. I think it's a little different than to the fan. The fan sees 2 first-round picks, but when you're talking about having the 30th pick in a round where you don't have 30 first-round grades, it feels more like you've got a first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, and a 3rd-round pick, because very likely the player they take at 30 is a player that on their board they will have graded. Very likely. I'm not saying definitely, but likely. You get into the 30s, you're talking about players that have late 1 but early 2 grades on them.
Second, yeah, almost certain that they're going to be 2nd-round grades. Oh, yeah, for sure. So
changes that discussion, though, right? About that value of the 30th pick, and if you wanted to try to trade it.
Sure. Now we had some great in our Patreon chat on Wednesday night. There were a couple of really good points in terms of, okay, well, what if Banks, the corner from Maryland, is there? I said, you got to take him. I mean, unless they have to be careful trading down from there, because again, not everyone's draft boards are the same. That by scheme, by height measure, whatever the case may be, teams don't see players exactly the same.
Right.
They see the same tape, but they don't look at them the same way for various reasons. So if one of these really good corners drop down, it's a major discussion, because yes, the 2 veterans are going to start for 2 seasons, but as I mentioned in the chat, it doesn't mean that in year 2, if they draft a corner in the first 2 rounds, that kid can't cut into the veterans' time. Of course he can. That's these guys are in their 30s now. Of course they could start splitting their time. Look at, I know BG's a little bit of an extreme example. He's 5 years older than these guys, 4 or 5 years older, and he coming off a great year. But sometimes, look, does Slay really have to play every snap anymore? It's amazing. I mean, it's pretty impressive, but he doesn't have to. If Zach McPherson was the player they thought he was, maybe he could have gotten 15 snaps a game for those guys, but he wasn't good enough last season.
Yeah. Great point, by the way, because it just put that scenario you brought up, just got into my head. Let's say the Eagles are at 30. Let's say they like Deonte Banks. Let's say they want to take him, but a team that is picking, say, 39th overall, which means 2nd round, early 2nd round, wants to move up to 30. So flip spots, right? And then you get an additional whatever. Let's say you get a 4th round pick out of that. Okay. but you're the Eagles and you're not sure that Banks is going to be there if you pick a 39 instead of 30. Okay. If you don't think he's going to be there, and the players that you're looking at in that 39 area are not as, highly graded, is it worth just getting that extra fourth rounder, which percentages tell you is what, a 10% chance of making it or being a starter in the NFL, right? Is it
starter,
worth it?
yeah.
Right, making a starter, right. Is it worth it to do that move?
Not
That's the kind of calculation,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to call it mental gymnastics, that goes on in the head of every GM. But with Howie, when we analyze him, I mean, he loves to wheel and deal. He loves to get that extra pick. He doesn't like to go multiple rounds. And you can see that kind of, going both ways with whether or not to move down 9 just to pick up an extra mid-round pick, or stay at 30 and get the player that you've got ranked there. And, we saw it play out in front of our eyes a couple of years ago where Howie, and there was a disagreement with him moving out of that round with Tom Donahoe, and not everybody always agrees. Now, again, that stuff goes on everywhere. Don't want to make too big of a deal of it. Ali McNeil, right. So, but the point is, those are really, really difficult decisions that you have to make sort of on the spot.
Yeah, and it goes by, and they got Milt Williams. By the way, I get McNeil's a true nose. Milt Williams is a good player. That actually,
they're both good players. It's very interesting. They're both good players.
Sure.
Yeah.
But getting back to your point, it depends on their tier, because that'll ultimately determine. Okay, that could be, let's say you grade on a 10-point scale. Your top 10 picks are 8.5 to 9.5. It's rare that you're going to get a 10. Jalen Carter off the field is probably 10.
Mm-hmm.
Tyree Wilson's probably 8.5, 9. But once you get to the late first round, you're talking about like a 7.0 grade or 6.5 grade. 30. Remember, there are only 31 picks this year in the first round. So let's say 32 to 40 in that area. 6.0 to 6.5, that you have to make a decision, because you have a certain grading system, because each team does it like this. By number, this is what kind of level starter you could think that these guys are. So you mentioned 4th round pick, by the way. The Eagles picked them 4th round pick. 4th round picks are generally thought of as high-end backups, probably not starters. 3rd rounders are low-end starters, high-end backup, starter. A good starter, like a low to mid-level starters, a 2nd rounder. Obviously, guys could play out of that and be much better, but that's what you're seeing. Obviously, 1st rounders that you believe is going to be a Pro Bowler at some point. That's what your hope is. That's why you draft in the 1st round. So you're right. You got to be careful, though, of getting to, okay, I want to get more picks. Let's trade down here. You don't want to give up a really good player. But that's 100%. Why your board is very interesting. And, the other thing is, and we've been asked this, we haven't talked about this in months, with Andy Weidel gone, does a grading system stop? I mean, not stop. Does it change at all with Alec Halaby, sort of the guy now who's heavily involved in Julian Lurie and whatever he's doing? And, I just wonder about that stuff. I wonder, because we said this after we gave our intel on all these moves that they made in the personnel department. I think you said it. We're not going to know until they actually draft, because then you look at, okay, was this an analytics type pick? Like the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside pick, it looks stupid to say it was analytically based, but it hit a lot of the metrics. I know he didn't run very well this level, but he did some things that would hit some of the analytical marks. So I'm interested to see how this goes.
Yeah, no, fascinating point. And also, to add to that, as you talk about the changing of the scouting staff, I mean, it's not just Andy, right? There's a lot of new faces in this front office, and scouts are human beings. I know that sounds weird to say, obviously, or obvious to say, but the way one person sees not just a player, but philosophically. I talk to different personnel people like you do, right? And you can tell some people, I bet you have people you think who are a little bit harder on prospects. You have some people who are a little bit leaner. You almost know what they're going to say on certain guys because you talk to them enough and you know how they lean, right? But they do the same job, but they see things differently. So you have now again, Howie is making the pick, so it's not like the vision overall is going to change all that much. But when you have an entirely new staff, I mean, I shouldn't say entirely new. When you have as many new personnel people as the Eagles have, I think that does sort of change the dynamic of how the rankings are done, because you just have different viewpoints now that are being added to the mix.
Yeah, I did a 1-round mock for my friends at Pro Football Network. And actually, when I did the Eagles pick, I think at 30, I talk about the safety of Branch from Alabama. His 40 time is very slow. Now, the Eagles have surprised me over either Selleck didn't run a great 40. There have been some instances where they didn't hit analytical marks, where the guy wasn't very fast, but the tape was so good, they just went by what the tape showed him, which is great. But I don't know how things are going to change now with Alec Halaby in charge. So, or whatever title he has, we know a lot of it goes through him.
Yep.
So I'm fascinated to see with Andy. Andy was the guy who set the board, and the board will be set, by the way, how Halaby, whatever their grading system is. I have no idea how they're going to do it now, but I'm interested to see. We'll learn a lot through how they pick, and does Howie, it's Howie's call, as you said, but because they have their own unique grading system, will this impact trading down? I don't know. It's the whole thing is fascinating to see how, as you said, how things are going to change here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So you bring up Andy Weidel. That segues nicely into our next segment here, because he actually acquired a player this week for the Steelers. He and Omar Khan, who's the head department, who was not a former Eagle. We were joking last podcast how he's got an assortment of former Eagles and Jets, right? Because his buddy Joe Douglas with the Jets on the Pittsburgh roster. Well, they acquire a guy in a trade who almost was an Eagle when they traded for Allen Robinson, who, as we've detailed many times, the Eagles went after last year in the offseason. And, he apparently he decided to sign with the Rams, and that changed the course of everything the Eagles did, in a good way for the Eagles, obviously, in a not good way for the Rams. But I bring that up because, the Steelers, you look at them and you say, well, you have Deontay Johnson, you have George Pickens, who looked fantastic as a rookie last year. And they drafted the kid who's going to come back from the knee injury, Calvin Austin, right? Is that?
Yes, from Memphis, yes.
Right. So what are they doing? And, as I understand it, they were just looking for wide receiver depth. And this draft is not exactly brimming with a lot of really good, ready to play right now and make impact, NFL talent. There are a couple of guys in the first round, obviously, who will, but as you get deeper, it doesn't look that way. And the Steelers love to take receivers later rounds in the draft. So I think that segues into what we were going to talk about, because we had our latest intel with Greg Cosell. He went over all the wide receivers, and he sort of, just like last year with Pickens, he dropped sort of a bomb on us on a guy that he really likes that I didn't, not like someone we're regular. It's not like Jackson Smith and Jigba, who he does like, or Quentin Richard. It's not a name that's kind of household right now. So that's why you got to go check it out. It's on all of our podcasts and YouTube platforms. Greg's always like that. He's always got like 2 or 3 guys at a position. I remember Peyton Turner, the defensive end, put us on to 2 years ago, said, I love his tape. No one was talking about him, and the Saints went and drafted him in the first round. We didn't even Greg didn't know that was going to happen.
He was surprised, but unfortunately Turner's been hurt, and it's nobody's fault. He's barely played. He's been hurt the 2 years. But yeah, in fact, what the other thing is, because I know a bunch of people said, hey, you guys didn't talk about these other guys. So I don't know, 5 or 6 players from other positions we didn't have time for. Tucker, the Syracuse running back, who had to get cleared medically, as I understand it, who got cleared. Izzy Abanikana, we talked about him. The kid, the D lineman, who I know from Northwestern.
Tommy, we'll call him.
But yeah, the people are mocking to the Eagles at 30. I'd be shocked if he went there. I talked to other teams. D-line coach told me he gave him a low 2, a high end 3 in his grade that he turned into his club. Wow. So, yeah, I mean, he likes him. He said he's a fun guy, and his 40 times ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, the run of 4.48 in 40 is ridiculous for a D lineman, but
sure,
he's got some technique stuff. He's a guy. As I'm told, he needs a lot more work. Look, now we know the Eagles surprise us every couple of years. We go, okay, I didn't see that coming. Where it's a guy that other teams, as we've had unfortunately say sometimes, boy, maybe the Eagles know something other teams don't. They have this guy much higher graded, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. So we'll see. Yeah,
this feels like we would be calling that an analytics pick if that wound up happening, based on what you just said about his speed for alignment. It sort of reminds me of Odafe Owe, who was Jason Owe at the time at Penn State, sort of coming out of nowhere. I mean, Penn Staters knew who he was. It's not like he wasn't completely off the radar, but not until he blazed it at the combine did people really, and the other testing drills, did people sort of almost lose their marbles about what kind of an athlete that he was. And obviously he went to the Ravens in the first round. So interesting stuff. All right. So again, Greg Cosell, the latest intel with Greg Cosell. It's up on the platforms. Really good, really good intel on wide receivers, which is always a great position to kind of get into. And then we will hear from Greg again. He'll be a part of our NFL draft coverage on especially Thursday night when the Eagles make picks. And then the week after, he'll help us recap. It'll be the intel with Greg Cosell, and he'll recap the draft with us. So it'll be a really fun time, and glad to have Greg aboard.
I can't wait. I love doing that post-draft show with him because, look, he just goes by remember, he did not like Zach McPherson at all. He just didn't see what the Eagles saw. And so far, you would have to say he's been right. He's not right on everything, but for a guy who didn't play the game, he just goes by what the tape tells him. And he can't predict how the guy will do at the next level. He has no idea who's going to draft him and who's going to be coaching him.
Right.
But he's got a very good track record of his analysis and how they fit in. I cannot wait to see who they draft. And hopefully they don't. Hope this is not another draft where they only have 5 picks like 2018. I just hope that doesn't happen.
No, I hope not either.
I want to talk about 10 players,
That would be nice. That would be nice. So we have to say the people have spoken. You and I enjoyed it, but the people really enjoyed it. We have to now do every year, a week before the draft, we have to have Andrew Zaccheaus on with us and do his final Eagles 7-round mock draft. That was our last podcast before this one. We went through all his picks, right? And people loved it, got great feedback. They like how objective Andrew is and how he knows all the small school guys too, or the middle round and late round guys, and how it all makes sense. There's no exaggeration. There's no reaching. He's not taking 2nd round guys in the 6th round. So we will do this once a year with Andrew Zaccheaus because the people said they loved it.
Oh, we're doing it every year. That was such a great idea you had. That was a home run. Love doing it. In fact, Andrew, if I'm not mistaken, he nailed the Milton Williams one. Didn't he really like him?
I think a couple of years ago he nailed Milton Williams.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah,
that
was a good one. So, and we did, as I mentioned, we did our Patreon chat for our new Patreon people. We do chats every Wednesday all year. I do them all year at 8:00 Eastern. Unless I have to travel, but this next week's will be 7 p.m. Eastern because you and I have a lot going on before the draft. And then we've got this Tuesday, the 25th at 8 p.m. We've got our live Q&A with our Patreon subscribers. Is it via Zoom?
Yes, that'll be Zoom. We always do it on Zoom.
Cannot wait. In fact, folks, we're planning on going an hour at least. So get everything ready to go. Get psyched up for it. And then before we get started here, tell us about your latest Powder Blue show.
Yeah, the Powder Blue podcast that I do with Frank Close, Phillies Insider. We are doing it once a week. So please subscribe, Powder Blue podcast. I promise you, the Phillies will be more fun as these weeks go on. They are, if you consider the fact that right now, after beating Chicago 2 out of 3, I believe they're 8-11, right? And they started off 1-5.
Exactly.
So 7-6 since then, without Ranger Suarez, without Bryce Harper, with some other injuries going on. They lost Derek Hall. I feel like they're starting to put it together. Trey Turner got a big hit the other day, big home run, first one. We just got to get Kyle Schwarber get going and get the pitching going. Nolan and Wheeler, who are historically slow starters. So I think everything's going to work out and be all right. So the Powder Blue podcast that I do with Frank Close, Phillies Insider, it's available on all podcast platforms. Please become a subscriber and give us your ears.
Before we get started here, just real quick, are you buying the stuff with Harper being well ahead of schedule? It sure looks incredible.
Yes, I'm buying it ahead of schedule. I'm not buying it's going to be like, I've heard like before May, like in the next week or two. And I don't know. That would be, nothing surprises me with that guy because he's almost like a robot. But that would be, I think, a little ambitious. But man, they need it. I just think they need the leadership. They need to settle the lineup correctly and everything. But although I'm really enjoying, I don't want to get too far into this, but Bryson Stott as a leadoff hitter, especially the way he's been getting on base and hitting, it's working. So I kind of like that. But
he will be part of what we talk about. Come within the next 5 minutes. You'll understand why I'm mentioning him. There's a lesson to be learned about being patient with players.
I like it. All right. Inside the Birds, of course, is presented by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort. It's the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. All right, let us get into a few things early here. Obviously, we'll start with Jalen Hurts. the 5-year extension, 255 million. Now, you always say the devil's in the details, right? Like you have to wait for the actual contract to be submitted, to then be able to really break it down and see what's guaranteed, what's not guaranteed, what's
Sure.
sort of hot air and not. As of the time that we're recording this, it's not in yet, right?
Correct. Yeah. So what if you've been listening to our shows the last couple of months, we've had the contract terms for all their free agents, most of them before anyone else got them. So we have a really good contract source. And I asked the guy on Wednesday, I said, hey, did you get the terms? He goes, no, I'm dying to see them, as I'm sure you are. I'll let you know. And Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk, I guess he said there was some issue with the contract. It's small, as I understand it, but Mike put it out there. There was some issue. So that's just got to get corrected. That's why it's not out. So I don't generally like talking about contracts until I get the terms.
100%.
Unless they're out somewhere. They're not. The breakdown's not out there, and I'd be happy to do it. But I'm fully expecting the typical BS Eagles. I don't know what you want to call it, structure that agents talk about. They go, oh, here we go. They're going to shove down these option bonuses down my throat because this is what they do. Because it saves you cap space. It really, the Eagles they're a super big cash over cap team. This is how they continue to do this stuff. Their cash numbers are way bigger than their cap numbers because they manipulate the cap by keep using these option bonuses. So that's how you keep your cap numbers low the first couple of years. Once you exercise the bonus, the cap numbers go up in future years. So that's their trick that they do. And it's agents they know they don't really have a choice. They kind of have to do that because they can't come up with the argument against doing them.
Right.
Like if you don't want to do them, what are you going to do that could save the Eagles cap space? They want to keep together a great team. It's been a pretty good thing they've been doing.
Sure. Now you said there's an issue, not an issue. There's something holding it up. Now you and I had a funny exchange over text, right? That's why you see me kind of like smiling at each other. I thought I made a pretty good joke. What did I say was the holdup?
So what you say is this a typical view because it's a typical sports writer sarcasm. You're like, well, Howie's going to because Howie's restructuring a couple times.
Yeah, I said it's probably been restructured 3 or 4 times already. So
honestly, because the triggers are in there. There are things called simple restructures where the club has the ability, without the agent being able to do anything about it, because they both agreed on it, that if the club wants to restructure, you could take a roster bonus, turn to a signing bonus to create cap space, to take a major base salary and convert that to a signing bonus. Oh, let me just give you one thing. I was just laughing. Like I had an hour to kill on Wednesday, so I was looking over every single Eagles contract.
Well, you look at that. I had this joking vision of Jalen Hurts sitting at that table where they take the picture of him signing the contract.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And then right after he signs the contract, then Howie and Jake present him with another one saying, all right, now sign the reach.
You sign the new one, right? the AJ Brown the contract was super inflated. Yeah. Okay, ready for this is an all-timer. Don't look it up. I don't know if it's out there, but don't look it up. What do you think AJ Brown's cap number is in 2026?
2026
this has to be one of the highest cap numbers in NFL history.
I'm going to say like 35.3.
Up.
Oh, come on.
41.641 million.
What if he doesn't agree to restructure?
It doesn't matter. There's no guaranteed money. Just cut.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
Well, I hear you. No, but here's the thing. See, these damn option bonuses. Not every option bonus is fully guaranteed. It depends on the language. Like BG, I think had a non-guaranteed option bonus, which I think it was BG that the Eagles declined a couple of years ago, but that was fully expected. This is the way they set the contract up, so that way both teams get to okay, we're going to let this contract void in the next year. We need to talk, or the poison pill where the Kelsey thing we talked about a couple of years ago when they put one in June for like $30 million. Obviously, that gets them back to the bargaining table,
right?
The late Floyd Reese, who was the GM of the Titans, I remember asking him, there was a $50 million roster bonus in Steve McNair's contract. I said, Floyd, why would you do that? I don't know if it was Bus Cook's decision or his. And he goes, no, this just gets, and it may have been Bus Cook who put it in there, but it made both teams, okay, we know this is in there. We have to avoid this. We're not paying you this $50 million. So well in advance, we know we're going to talk to you.
So when you look at the contract in general, again, we're not going to comment, discuss great detail the contract itself, right? Because the details aren't in yet. And I've made the mistake years ago of talking about a contract and trying to really judge it favorable, not favorable, team friendly, player friendly before seeing the real numbers. That can change the discussion. But we can have this discussion. We know he's going to get a lot of money. We know 51 million annually is going to be the range, whether at least for the first few years, and we'll see what happens down the road with some of the other quarterbacks. So I'll ask you this, Adam. Was it risky for Jalen Hurts to be the first one to do this? When I say first, I mean among Burrow, among Burrow, Herbert, and then maybe Lamar. Or was it risky for the Eagles to do this?
I don't think it was risky for the Eagles. Okay, that's a great way to set this up because that's actually what I wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeffrey Lurie said this at the I believe it was the Super Bowl. I know he spoke at the Super Bowl, and so when one of the media people said, "Hey, you guys could extend Hurts's deal. What if he doesn't play well in the Super Bowl or doesn't play whatever the case may be?" And obviously, he played very well other than fumble. Jeffrey said he doesn't have to prove anything; he's proven enough because they know him. He's around them all the time. And on your question, sure, they could have waited, but this is not the way they do business. Their bets on extending players, mostly really good. Now we laughed about the Jeffrey restructure, the last one, which we go, why the hell did you do that? By the way, before he got hurt again, we're like, why of all people, why would you do that? Okay, that was a mistake. But their long-term bets are almost always right. Like Wentz, okay. Ironically, it's crazy how they did it. They extended Wentz, and 9 months later they drafted Hurts. But as we noted that no one wanted to believe us, but they would later admit it. Hurts was drafted to be his backup. Things didn't work quite out like that. It didn't work out quite like that later on because Wentz went south, wanted out, his career's over, or whatever. He's a backup for now. But anyway, getting back to Hurts, and you and I have seen this up close. He struggled mightily in his first training camp. No, it is what it is. Okay. 21, a little better, still shaky. 22 off season. Here we go. Great training camp. Wow. This could be a breakout season. Let's see what happens. When you see it, you know it. This is what coaches will tell you. It's not a mystery. That when the confidence is there and you don't jack him out of the lineup, you don't jerk with him. You remember when Dick Vermeil has that great line of Jaws on the sideline. People have seen this from NFL films. He puts his arm around him because I think he was probably getting booed. You don't have to ever worry about me pulling you out of the game. The Eagles never screw with Hurts. You tell me. I don't remember them benching him at all.
No. Well. I mean, there was the Nate Sudfeld game, but
right. Well, but again, okay, that one.
I'm
the way
kidding,
we
though.
were told it was there's just a split the snaps, and I don't know what Peterson did. He didn't do what they were agreed to. He screwed up the rotation, and then Joe Judge accused him of cheating. I don't know. Moron. That was stupid.
The Eagles were losing at the time, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be one heck of a back channel cheating.
I like the guys from Philly, and I kind of root for. I've never met the guy, but I mean, well, come on, man.
Yeah, a little heat of the moment stuff there, I think.
Yeah, he's a big crybaby. But anyway, so coaches will tell you when the light goes off and you're around this kid, he's got no entitlement. He's a coach's son. He's a great kid. And the way he connects with his teammates is something which it means, look, Wentz got away with sort of not connecting because he was so elite. But once he started to regress, stories came out about entitlement and doesn't connect well with his teammates. That starts to matter when you're not doing well. Well, this kid got better and better and better. And the reason why I brought up Bryson Stott, I remember you and I talking about him last year. He was awful. Chop hitter, batting 180, on base percentage was less than 300. I think you and I agreed they can't pull him. Stop sending him down. Just let him play. You got to know.
Yeah.
Well, the Eagles had to know. We all know that they were trying to get Watson and they're involved. It didn't work out. Good, thankfully for that. And Russell Wilson wasn't interested in coming here anyway. But move this forward. They saw him have a breakout season. Again, when you see it, you saw it. Everyone listening and watching us here on Thursday morning or however you're consuming the show later on, it was just obvious. And this coaching staff gets it. The marriage between the coaches and this player, it's obvious. You have to do this now. Like you said, why would you wait, right? You've covered this team for 20 some odd years. Why would you wait?
Right. So I agree. I think that the deal made sense for both sides. when you talk about risk, there's always risk with
Oh,
a
yeah.
deal like that.
Don't
Obviously,
get
the
me wrong.
risk is more on the Eagles than Jalen Hurts. If the other three quarterbacks sign and they wind up somehow making a ton more, you could say, oh, well, Jalen Hurts lost 5 to 15 million. So what? He's still going to be able to feed himself, his family, and
Yeah, it's
everybody in his
life-changing
family for
money.
the next
Right.
for the rest of his life. So the risk is, to me, is a little bit more on the Eagle side, only because he plays the game such a physical style. He's a runner. We know he rushes a lot. He's already had an ankle injury. He's already had an ankle surgery we know of. He's already had the shoulder injury, and he plays that way. He's tough. I mean, he's going to carry the ball more than your conventional quarterback. Him, guys like Josh Allen, same thing, right? They're going to run a lot and they're going to take a lot of hits. He's not as big as Josh Allen, but still, he's
Strong
going
as
to take
hell,
a lot of hits. And he's young now, but in 3 years from now, when those cap numbers get really exorbitant, if he's a good quarterback but declining because he's constantly getting hit and hurt, well, then the risk is on the Eagles side. But that's a risk that you have to take with by the way, every quarterback gets hit, even the ones who don't run around a lot. We went through how many quarterbacks last year got hurt and missed 2, 3, 4 games. Tua doesn't run. He gets hurt. He got hurt all the time, right?
Yeah, because he doesn't see the rush very well. He's
Exactly.
got a
So
quick.
quarterbacks get hit. Aaron Rodgers broke his hand.
Yeah, sure.
Every quarterback we went through basically got hurt except for like 6 or 7. So that's part of the deal as well. I think that people who have said that the Eagles should have waited one more year don't see the bigger picture. Like that's bad business. First of all, if you don't give Jalen Hurts an extension this year, he's not playing for whatever his base salary was going to be. I forget, 4 million, something like that. He's holding out. And you just coming off a Super Bowl. You're trying to get back there. You're trying to put together a team with Jalen Hurts that can get back to the Super Bowl, if not this year, then next year in the future. You don't want this guy holding out, because he will hold out the entire year and say, look, if you're not going to give him the money, somebody else will, so I might as well be healthy. It sucks that I have to hold out a whole year. It may cost me some millions because I'm taking a year off, but someone's going to want me and pay me, and I got to be healthy for that.
Right. And I know you're hypothetically saying he would hold out. Well,
Correct.
Obviously he would. If I'm Nicole and his agent and I'm Jalen, or if I'm Jalen, there's no way in hell I'm reporting in training camp if I don't have a deal, because they'll never admit it, but the deadline's usually training camp for these things, because the players will tell you they don't want to deal with the constant questions from reporters every day. Is it bothering you? How whatever. Alex Smith has talked about this before. He kind of shut it down. He was sick and tired of I forget which team it was what he was with, but he talked about he just said, I'm done talking about it. I'm just not talking about it anymore. He just got sick and tired of it. And this is, you avoided that. Now the two things I thought would happen happened. I thought he'd be the first one in. I just kind of felt, because the Eagles, not that they're putting pressure on him, they were pretty aggressive trying to get this done. And to me, I never got the feeling that this is going to be a big issue for him. They were technically on his timeline. The Eagles wanted this done pretty quickly. They want to get this out of the way. They create all this cap space to get this done. It went to the range I gave it was 53 million, but I didn't think he'd do that long of a deal. That 5 years. Plus, he's got the one. So they got him for 6 more years. That did surprise me a little bit. I was not expecting him.
He might do a 4 or.
I
agree.
I'm a little surprised that he did that, but this is, again, we haven't seen we know the full guaranteed signing is 110 million. I want to see how the rest of I guess the rest of the reported guarantees, about 60 more million, get triggered later.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see how that's structured. But the fact of the matter is, this is done. It was a major priority for this club. It's out of the way, and it's funny. We love doing this contract shows. Well, they don't need. I mean, honestly, when you look who's left over, they're all backups. There's really nobody else to extend right now. I mean, I guess they could do Reddick if Reddick has enough. If he's off to a crazy year again, would it surprise you if they went to him around November?
Absolutely,
because he only signed a 3-year deal. So they go to his. He's I think Chaffee Fields as an agent, former Penn State receiver.
Mm-hmm.
They go to his agent. I think in November. It wouldn't surprise me, because it would be smart, because this dude is such a perfect fit for the scheme. If Desai runs his scheme similar to Gannon, we know it's going to run Fangio. We just don't know what the differences will be quite yet.
Right.
If Reddick is anywhere close to what it was last season, they got to go to him early. It's just that 15 million a year is such a bargain. It sounds crazy, but it is. You're looking at, if I'm Chaffee, I want 22 to 25 million. I want a Myles Garrett deal. I want well into 20 million. This is the kid was awesome this past. Was he an all-pro or just a Pro Bowler?
I believe he was all pro. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a candidate for defensive player of the year. So yeah, he was all pro.
Incredible. And
yeah.
His energy.
Not only that, like now you finally can say, if you're Shafi, right?
Yeah.
Because every team uses every trick in the book to leverage, as leverage in negotiation. But don't give me the Arizona was a scheme thing, because then I did it in Carolina.
Oh yeah,
Give me that I was playing across from Brian Burns, or what. Like, you did it 3 years in a row, and each year you had more. There's very few people who have double-digit sacks 3 years in a row that aren't top 5 paid at their position. So I agree with you 100%. He has every right to say, I'm not a flash in the pan. I'm not a fluke. I'm the real thing now. You saw it with your own eyes. Pay me. So.
And just want to add this: give Jeffrey Lurie credit. We've criticized him when we thought it was was warranted. Give him credit here. He opens his purse string, so to speak. The club does. Open the wallets. Excuse me. He just does. He just says he's so forward thinking. And also give Joe Banner credit in an odd way. Joe was really the one I'm thinking, because he was Mr. They called it the Joe Banner rule when the NFLPA had enough of the Eagles extended contracts after 2 years. They made it later on. They made it you had to wait till 3 years to do it, because that was the Joe Banner rule. But give the Eagles credit for making good bets on players. You talked about extending early. Joe had said when he'd been on a show explaining it, they were okay because they were around the player all the time to take the early risk, but the money that they would save in cash, which is way more important to cap. It's not even close. It's all about cash with teams. Cap is what you have to work around with the GM, and the Eagles have found a great gimmick to work around, option bonuses and so forth. But it's cash is king in the National Football League. And Jeffy, they pay their coaches well, their front office people extremely well. People love working for the Eagles. And look, two Super Bowls in 5 years, won one of them. This offense we're going to get to in a second, how they've structured this offense with contracts and how long these guys are signed for. Folks, this offense is going to be elite for years. I'm just telling you. If the key players are healthy, they're going to be something to be reckoned with for a long time.
We're going to get to that in a second. Adam, it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer. They can't wait to celebrate with you, and not just you. I mean, everyone, all of our listeners, all of our viewers. Join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes. So be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit them. All right. That's Ocean Casino Resort, the exclusive summer resort, Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds.
Looking forward to seeing them soon.
Yeah. Very much looking forward to meeting with them. Back to what you were saying. It's kind of funny how at one point we thought the Eagles, because of the 2021 season where they were so run centric, right? And that's how they redesigned their offense. And we were talking about, this is not what the owner wants for the long term. And, what are we now? 18 months later, they've totally reshaped. They're bringing in A.J. Brown, extending Goddard, coaching and maturing and developing Jalen Hurts into a guy who could just air it out and had great deep ball accuracy last year. And now they are exactly what the owner wanted, a dynamic offense with weapons galore. Oh, they're drafting Devontae Smith, right?
Yeah.
And they're all, like you were mentioning, these guys aren't going anywhere you never know what could happen as far as someone wants to trade, someone this that, but from a contract standpoint, they're locked in.
No, they've done a phenomenal job. They're just really, he's 1 or 2 steps ahead of other teams, really, in getting this done. He's got a great game plan. He's got good guys. You mentioned Jake Rosenberg and Bryce Johnston. Yep. And all the other people and the analytic people and the contract people. They got something special going on. Yes, they have some things with the roster that they have to clean up. Safety, obviously, is a big one, and some depth for the future, no doubt about it. But they're really set up well. And that's what we're going to talk about in like 30 seconds here is the contracts. But I just wanted to give them a shout out. How great. Look, everybody knows, most of you watching are super followers of the Eagles, so you already know this. But what you may not understand is teams they don't look everything, they look at everything in like a 3-year plan. They're so well set up, not only for this year, next year, but for the next 3 years. And I get what Dallas has had a nice offseason, but I'm telling you, Howie's so ahead of the game now and making sure these guys are going to be around for a while, at least on offense. Okay. At least they have some work to do on defense, but at least on offense, there's no reason to think this won't be a top 3 offense at worst, if not number 1, for a minimum of the next 3 years. They are so loaded, and we'll see what they do at running back. That's another position, but they all the key positions other than running back, and you could argue how key it is with the Eagles.
Yep.
They're lined up, man, to be something special the next 3 years.
They are, and not just the skill position players, but even the offensive line too, as you noted.
Yep.
Landon.
Yep.
You know, we know Jason Kelsey's on a year-to-year deal, but it's been fine so far. And Lane got the extension, and Mailata's got the extension, and man, things that, like you just said, it's like all the pieces come together, and this offense should be a force for the next few years at least. And by the way, they added to the offense. So we'll get into our next segment here. It's almost like a free agent signing that everybody in this area was hoping for a while, thought could happen. Andrew Zaccheaus has been on Twitter saying it should happen for like 3 weeks now. And it finally did happen. The Eagles signed a guy with some local ties, Jersey guy who went to St. Joe's Prep in Philadelphia, wide receiver. Correct me if I butcher this, please. I think it's Olamide Zacchaeus.
Olamide Zacchaeus.
Olamide
the only
Zacchaeus.
reason why I know, so you'll laugh. So on Sirius XM, you can get all the games on Sundays. So when I would drive back from our pregame show, for fantasy, I'm because I can't stop my car. I'm like, okay, let's say I had whoever the case, whoever's with the Falcons, I may have had it, or someone in the game on the opposite team. So I kept hearing Wes Dorm, their announcer, go, Olamide Zacchaeus. He scored in like a 9 route, and he went off. He went, Zacchaeus, Olamide Zacchaeus. I'm like, okay, I heard it, man. I got it. I'll never forget that. So yeah, I couldn't forget that. So here's the book on him. Yeah, I'd mentioned him probably the last 3 or 4 shows. I'm like, this is the best. This is probably the number 1 street free agent receiver out there. He's smaller. He's about 5'8" and 3/10 of an inch, but so I'm told by a pretty good personnel source, he's a movement Z off the ball because he's small, or he's a slot. He's got outstanding quickness and burst, but he's small. And Arthur Smith, as I understand it, he loves tall receivers. It wasn't technically his call on the receiver from USC, Drake London, but he wanted him badly. He wanted a big receiver. His son, another big receiver, Matt Collins, who's 6'4", who did a nice job for the Raiders, former Eagle, of course. The way I understand it, Scotty Miller's going to, he's not really big. He's taller than Zacchaeus, but Scotty Miller, formerly the Bucks, who's from their division, he'll replace Zacchaeus' role. They're still looking for another receiver, the Falcons, but getting back to him here, to me, and someone asked a great question in our chat on Wednesday, could he potentially replace Quez Watkins? Watkins, by the way, is on the funny of his rookie deal. Sure, he could take his job, sure. I mean, I know Quez is maybe faster down the field and he's taller, but by the way, Zacchaeus with really bad drop issues in college, he catches pretty much everything to him. He's just smaller. And look, they needed a veteran backup receiver. He is that guy. So I'm interested to see what happens here. I'm not, Quez is no lock to make the team anymore. I know Sirianni may love him, but the guy's got to produce.
Yeah, I mean, they lost Zach Pascal. That was their kind of veteran receiver, their slot receiver, their number 4. And there were times during the year where Pascal pilfered time that would ordinarily have gone to Watkins for whatever reason. And I do think Zacchaeus has even more of an opportunity to get maybe pilfer some time from Watkins too, because he's more, I think, suited for the slot. I mean, this is also a guy who's not afraid to block because he played 70% of the snaps for the Falcons.
He's a starter, yeah.
And they ran a lot. Yeah, he was a starter, and they run. And he lines up inside. So you got to be able to, put your body on other guys' bodies in those situations. So there's an opportunity. And what I find really interesting for a guy who is, as you mentioned, known for short area quickness, like good burst in that. Not necessarily a linear vertical guy like Quez Watkins. They have the same career yards per catch average, around 13 to 14. 13 and a half, I
They'll
think.
take a shot play. I mean, they will do it, but he's a guy that in short to intermediate will take the ball. He'll get the ball and he'll go. And now at his numbers his final year at UVA, went to UVA, were phenomenal. But the word in scouting was his hands. He just didn't catch the ball correctly sometimes. But he really improved his hands. And look, I get it that Arthur Smith wants bigger receivers, man. But the guy in his little role there did a good job. And as we just talked about, he was a starter. But this is a nice signing, man. This is usually don't get these type of players this late. This is a good signing, and I know it's a depth signing. But it's a pretty good depth signing.
Yeah, no, it is a good. He's coming off like you said, his most productive year. He had over 500 yards for the first time in his career. I think 40 catches, 3 touchdowns. I've noticed he's had a catch of 45 yards or more at least once every year.
Yeah.
So like you said, he can turn on the jets or at least go upfield after the catch and make things happen. And I think it'll be interesting to see, because of his sort of natural slot abilities or Z abilities, if he does wind up taking away more snaps from Quez Watkins. We will see.
Sure. No, it's a good move. This is a no-brainer. No-brainer.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be something to watch during training camp for sure. All right, we'll get into some other things. First, I want to remind everybody to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. Let's pause real quick for a word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you happen to go out to Westchester, PA, and visit Sky Motor Cars in person, make sure you tell them Adam just sent you. You will get a great deal.
Just wanted to mention the contracts very quickly here. Hurts through 2028. A.J. Brown signed through 2026. Although, as we said earlier, they'd have to redo his deal. They can't take that cash, the cap and cash in 2026. But again, he is signed through 2026. Devontae Smith signed through 24 plus his 2025 fifth-year option. Goddard signed through 25. Lane Johnson through 26. Jordan Mailata through 25. Landon Dickerson through 24. Now, after this season, he is eligible, by the way, to be signed to an extension. And if he has another good year, you could be rest assured they will do that. So this offense, folks, so I just want to mention that these 7 key players are going to be here a long time. And Lane, everything we've heard, he's in a really good place with his life and his career. He feels really good. And the surgery went well. In my Mailata's a very solid left tackle, needs to be a little more consistent, but he's good. He's a good player. Landon Dickerson's also very good. I know the right guard job's open, but Goddard, Smith, A.J. Brown, Hurts. Show me a better 7 key players for an offense. Pretty good.
It'll be hard to find. Maybe the Chiefs, Dolphins, but there's just not that many teams that can match pound for pound. All right, so Adam, we know that because we've been talking about it ever since early in the offseason when we knew the Eagles were going to have just massive losses in free agency, that you always have to watch Howie Roseman on the trade market, right? And it seems like the early fixation for fans was on Jeffrey Simmons. He wants out of Tennessee. Well, that didn't happen. He got his extension in Tennessee. So now the latest target that people are fixated on is Budda Baker. He wants out of Arizona.
That's true.
Oh, go get him, Howie.
Simmons did not want out, by the way. Just so you know, he didn't want out. What happened is because because the GM
was it Mondiasenfort? No. The new is
Rand Carthon. Rand Carthon was kind of like the language he used was like it sounded like he said he's been in touch with him. He said there was nothing to worry about, but he wasn't like committing to getting him signed. So okay, well then fans started speculating, but they were not trading him.
Mm-hmm.
But you always have to. You have to, because look, but I would also say John Robinson flat out said at the combine, because I was at his press conference last year, the former GM. So no, AJ, we're working towards it. No, we're good. Well, he wasn't good later on towards the draft, so you never know. And Howie checks everything out. He's with Budda Baker, we'll talk about his contract in a second. Budda Baker wants a new deal. Okay, this is not a secret. He signed a massive deal. His agent, David Mulligetta, did a great job in 2020. I was stunned at the contract that Steve Keim did, the former GM. It was 2020. In fact, the deal held up at safety for like 2.5 years. Signed it right before the season started, 2020. A 4-year extension worth just under $15 million per season, $14.75 million. Full guaranteed signing was over $33 million. It was a great contract, a 2-year structure, but very, very heavy. The 2-year cash, I think, was probably over $16 million. It was a great contract, right? $16.5 million. But
yeah,
it's got 2 non-guaranteed years. And we see a lot of players try this stuff. They look at it, and the club's not willing to do it, at least to this degree. And they start going on social media. As you talked about, the fans are talking it up. They love it. The Eagles, as everybody knows, need safeties. I don't just need one for the future. They need 2. They got 2 guys who projected a starter on 1-year low-end deals. Well, here's the problem. Budda Baker's making $13.1 million this season. And 24, he's making $14.2 million. And by the way, the Cardinals have not shown any interest in trading him at this point. We'll see what happens. Things happen sometimes during the draft, like the A.J. Brown thing went down. But I totally get where he's at, because you worry about this if you're, no, he's only 27, believe it or not. He's a little bit younger than you think. He just turned 27 in January, so he's still relatively young. Doesn't have a big injury history. He's a good player. Now, he's not a major playmaker, but he's a good player.
That's why I think that the salary, the $13 million salary, isn't so difficult if you're the absorbing team, because he wants an extension anyway. So,
yeah.
The Eagles don't have a ton of money, but $13 million, it's only left for 1 year, right? So you
2 years.
bring
He's 2 years left. He's 2 years.
Yes, 2. I thought it was 1. You sure?
No,
okay.
He's 23 is 13.0. Basically 13. We're going to round off the 13.1 and 14.2 in 24. No guaranteed money left. And remember, the Cardinals get zapped with a proration, which is just under $8 million. So you're only taking his cash. That's it.
Right. But
again, if you took the contract and he wants a new deal, obviously you're gonna kind of do what the Eagles did with Slay. You might guarantee a lot more money, because that's part of what he wants. But you have to be careful, because you're bringing a guy like the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson type deals, and him playing is to the level that he did. That doesn't happen much at safety when you trade for a guy. And the whole thing was crazy how he became such a good player when he had to learn the scheme in season. Those things don't happen a lot,
No,
you can't count on that.
He's a good player, though, man. I mean, he's made 4 Pro
Bowles.
Bowls.
Budda's a good player. No, Budda's a good player. Fuck, he's a great leader, high character guy. Again, he's only 27. But you have to ask yourself, do you want to invest that type of money? Because the Eagles wanted Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back, but they didn't want to pay him. They didn't want to pay him. They didn't want to even pay him $12 million. Maybe at the combine, if he would have been a little smarter with engaging talks, like the agent, if the agent was willing to at least be more reasonable, maybe they could have gotten some reasonable number, which he was willing to accept, but they couldn't get there because he just had his mind on what he wanted. So the Eagles moved on. This guy, do you really want to pay him? You might have to average. Look, we just saw the deal that Jesse Bates got, and Bates got what, 7? What do you get, 16?
Yeah, but what is Budda Baker's leverage right now? I mean, he's under contract.
No. But if he's going to
hold out,
if he's being traded, you're going to get paid. I mean, that's why you.
Yeah, but I'm saying I feel like you can trade for him. You can. What if you trade for him? Agree to trade with the Cardinals, and you're not ready to give him an extension? Is he going to hold out?
Well,
at 27 years old.
No, because he's got 2 years left. Now, on Gardner-Johnson's side and the Eagles, they made it. They both agreed, because they just got him. Now, I get it. This situation is different. He was on the Fine rookie deal, where this guy's got 2 years left. But you could take that scenario and you could say, hey, listen, we're going to probably want to extend him. But, well, I don't see them taking him and not extending him, but keeping him.
I think they would give him an extension too, especially spread the money out.
Yeah, you would want to, but he's going to want to know that he's going to be an Eagle for a long time, under that scenario.
Yeah.
So you take that 13-1, you convert it, take some of that, turn into a signing bonus, and you can do it. I just, to guarantee that type of money he's a nice player, he's a good player, but is he a better coverage safety than anyone they have? Definitely. Is he an elite coverage safety? No, he's just a good football player.
Yeah.
Kevin Byard, by the way, who's now 30. The Titans haven't decided what they're going to do with him. We'll see what happens to him. But look, this guy would help him. I personally, I would do something with him, but I don't know if the Eagles want to tie up a lot of money with the safety position. They have not shown the willingness to do that. That's the point.
Well, they did it with Malcolm, though. I mean, they've shown a willingness to do it with a proven
years ago
player, a proven player. No, I don't mean when they first signed Malcolm. They gave Malcolm an extension after the Super Bowl because he was a proven player. He was their most indispensable player for a couple of years. They were playing 1,000 or more snaps.
Let me look at it. Let me see if I have that deal here with me.
You know, if like I was saying, if it's a guy who's really worth it, and even if he's not the number 1 or number 2 safety, is he a top 5 safety in the league? Probably. You know, he's still pretty good. So, I would do it. But again, the question is, well, what's it cost you? You don't have a 3rd round pick. I mean, you don't have a 4th round pick, a 5th round pick, and a 6th round pick. So are you going to give up a 3rd round pick? That's kind of, I don't know. I don't know what Arizona would even want anyway. I mean, it's the only question I would have is what do I have to give up for him? Because I'm already thin in draft picks here. So, would Arizona be all right with a future pick? Who knows?
Yeah. In fact, when did Malcolm leave the Eagles? 2020.
Oh man. Let's see. I want to say 2009, after the 2019 season.
Yeah, because remember he wanted an extension. They were not going to do it.
Right, because he was at the end of the 2nd contract that the Eagles gave him.
Yeah, he was gone in 2020. So 2019 was his last season, it looks like.
Right.
And they declined. I think he had an option, some sort of option on his contract, if I call it correctly. They were not going to roll it over.
Right.
And then he went back to the Saints. But anyway, they have to look at it. See, this is, to me, you could do something on the clock. Like if Brian Branch is there at 30, they have to look at all this stuff. They have to. The safety position for the future is not good. Let's call it like it is. They've ignored it for too long. They've not been able to draft and develop well enough at that position. I know they haven't really addressed it very much, but when they have, it hasn't really worked out great. Reed Blankenship's a great story. He wasn't even drafted. He was signed as an undrafted free agent, but they need starters for the future. It's not a big deal, but it's just not smart going with these 2 guys that they have now is just without competition. But do they want to blow up the competition and get this guy in there? It remains to be seen. We'll learn more next week on this.
It'll be pretty interesting. I see it as something that I think is at least more realistic when I think about it than trying to get Jeffrey Simmons, which would have cost you the huge money and the draft pick, and that didn't seem feasible. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So let's just tie a bow on this.
Yep.
We got some. I guess Wednesday was the last day that prospects could visit, right?
Yep.
It's always funny because the last 2 days of those days, you start to see names of guys like, wait a minute, isn't that guy like kind of a late 2, 3, 4? But those guys get visits too every once in a while. They got medical information or background information the teams want.
In
so
fact,
you'll see some strange names.
What I'll give you it wasn't technically Eagles related, but I remember doing a report on remember Kendall Wright, who was a 1st round pick for the Titans.
Kendall, is he an offensive lineman?
No, Kendall Wright was a receiver. He was a receiver.
Yep.
And the Patriots at the last minute brought him in, like out of the blue. They had a visit left. They had an opening for a visit. Someone canceled. He was a 1st round pick, a receiver. I forget where he went to school, but he was a receiver, and the Patriots at the last minute, like out of the blue, like brought him in. And I remember putting out there, and people were like, Kendall, right? Why would they want him? Maybe they had a slot receiver. He could play inside or outside. I know he played slot as well. So yeah, you're talking about sneaking guys in at the last minute. Sometimes teams do that if they have an opening and they really need information. Like Sean Tucker, the Syracuse running back, not the Eagles were bringing him in, but he had a medical issue. So sometimes if a team really likes a guy who's like a 3rd or 4th round, even 7th round, they're probably not going to do it. But if they had an opening left for a visit, they had 29 and they didn't use the 30th. Yeah, you could bring a guy in for medical reasons. You want to get more testing, or also like you'll see some reporting on, this guy was supposed to visit, but his flight got canceled, so they could back it up to make sure they got him in. And by the way, they had to be out by midnight. That was the rule. On Wednesday night, and then also you could work players out next week. You'd still do private workouts that can't be done at your complex, and they have to be done either near the school where the kid went, or they have to be near where he grew up. But you can still do that.
Right. All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. And of course, the next podcast that comes out Monday morning is our annual NFL 1st round mock draft, myself, Adam Caplan, and Andrew DeCecco. Look forward to doing that one. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.